Chris Keig is joining us here in the studio. Chris has been on the various social media, local media and everything last week or so, and we're catching up with you now. You are trying to find your family, let's put it like that. You're literally wanting to go back and do research. That's your thing. You've done a test a few years ago, you've done all that. But tell us more. I mean, first of all, have you had much response so far? Yeah,
the response has been very good. So I've had a number of different families contact me saying that they would like to test or sharing their information. And it's quite good. I even found one lady who came from a family of southern kegs that I thought died out. And she responded by saying, well, we're not dead quite yet. So it was quite a good response.
What names are you looking for then?
So I'm looking specifically for 6 Manx names: Keig, Oates, Cain, Cormode, Curphey and Cretney.
So pretty well the classic Manx names really there, isn't it?
Yes.
And what are you hoping to prove? What can you find out? I mean, where's this going to lead you, hopefully?
So I've managed to show through Y-DNA that all 6 families share a common male ancestor of Norwegian Viking origin, and out of the 135 unique Manx families based on surname and DNA, only 30 are of Viking descent. So for 6 out of 30 families to come from a single man, I actually believe that we're the descendants potentially of King Orry or Godred Crovan. So when King Orry invaded the Isle of Man, he became king in 1079, and his descendants went on to rule the Isle of Man for about 5 generations, for nearly 200 years of direct male descendants. And we know from the records they had many wives and concubines, there were a lot of sons. So when you look at the historical record, you can easily see that, well, actually, logically, there should still be living descendants. And the fact that I found 6 out of 30 Viking families all come from a single man, I think we're the descendants.
Could you make a claim for the Isle of Man? Like we had a few years ago, we had a king come forward, you know?
Well, the funny thing is, with that gentleman, he tried to claim he was a king based upon being a descendant of the Stanleys, who were the Lords of Man. They never actually called themselves kings because they didn't want to get their heads cut off by the King of England, so they thought better to be a lord with possessions than a king who was deposed. And the gentleman, he claimed descent from Thomas Stanley, but he was actually the second in line, and therefore he never would have inherited the Isle of Man. So his claims to kingship were not really founded on anything.
But he got a reality TV show out of it. He's quite a nice guy from all accounts.
Yeah.
That's the. So seriously, I mean, what if you can prove this? Anything particular come out of it? I mean,
Well, for example, we know that King Orry was of Norwegian origin. I think the Manx national anthem describes him as Orry the Great Dane. Well, actually, it would have been Norwegian. Yeah. And there's a few other things. So, Cretney, the surname Cretney means son of the Welshman, if we're to believe the Manx commentators from the 1800s. So if we assume they're correct and that they haven't made a mistake, well, there's an important question here. How does a Manxman of Manx Viking DNA end up with the surname son of the Welshman? So I think the logical answer is that at some point a Manxman has left the Isle of Man, gone to Wales and then had children, and then later on a son or grandson has returned to the Isle of Man. He would have a Welsh accent, and he would naturally, his children would be known as sort of son of the Welshman. Mm-hmm. Well, the last Manx king was known as Magnus, that was his name, and he died in 1265. And his son Godred returned to the Isle of Man in 1275, 10 years later, to take control. By this point, the Scottish took control of the Isle of Man from Norway. And there was a battle between the Scottish forces and the Manx forces, and sadly about 500 Manx people were killed, and Godred lost the battle. Well, Godred was recorded as fleeing into exile and back to Wales, which the Isle of Man had historically had strong ties to through the Crovan dynasty. So I think the Cretneys are actually direct descendants of King Magnus, and that the other families might be descended from other kings further back in time.
So if anyone hits this profile, they just get in touch with you, and then you'll take a swab. Will you do a DNA on them at some point?
Well, yeah, if they're up for it. So essentially what I'm looking for is men of those surnames, Keig, Oates, Cain, Cormode, Curphey, Cretney, to come forward and DNA test if they're up for it. The company I do it with is called Family Tree DNA, and they're based in Texas, and they're the company that the Manx DNA project run through. And what they would do is they would send a package with 2 swabs. You swab the inside of your mouth to collect cells. You send it back on the post, and they process the Y chromosome. The Y chromosome, it can only ever be passed down father to son. And because of that, if the Manx kings did have descendants, and if we were the living descendants, we'd carry the unique Y chromosome that they do.
Fascinating.
And what my ultimate goal is to actually DNA test the remains of the Manx kings. So in the Manx Museum, they have the remains of what they strongly believe to be 2 kings, which they found at Rushen Abbey, and there are 3 possibilities for their identities. The last King Magnus, who died in 1265 in Castle Rushen, he was buried in Rushen Abbey. His elder brother Ragnvalder, who was assassinated, he was buried in Rushen Abbey, and also their father King Olaf II, who was the great grandson of King Orry.
And you can still get some DNA.
Yes, so DNA, it's come on leaps and bounds over the last 10 years. The technology is becoming really advanced, and we're at the stage now where it's actually possible to extract DNA from remains that are thousands and thousands of years old. So I think there's a strong chance we can get DNA from the kings, and if we can, I'll be able to prove if the families, my group of families, are descendants of the kings, and even if we're not descendants of the kings, there's a chance I can find who is. So it could be, for example, the Killips or the Kisicks or the Callows or the Karens. You know, the 24 other Manx families of Viking descent, they too could potentially be them. So even if we're not, I could still find who is.
Fascinating, Chris. Fascinating. Please do feel free anytime to come back and talk more about this, because I mean, you might just hit at that fantastic moment and find that path all the way back. It's possible.
Yes, yeah. I mean, so with what I'm hoping to do is there are obviously a number of concerns and things I need to look into first, but I'm hoping Manx National Heritage will give approval to test the remains of the kings, and what that will involve is basically an examination of the remains, looking at which bones are most likely to hold DNA based upon the quality, and is it well preserved or is it damaged, and basically taking a sample of that bone, we'd send it off to a lab, they grind it down into powder, they dissolve it in water, that releases the DNA, and then we can actually then sequence and test it, and based upon the data we can get back, we could say, yes, we are the descendants of the kings, or actually it's the Killips or the Kisicks.
How do you feel about it? You feel pretty confident?
I think I'm probably 90% right.
Fantastic.
Yeah, just because of like I said, 20% of the Manx Viking population coming from a single man of Norwegian Viking origin.
Okay, your email address, we'll put it on the screen.
Yeah, so my email address is christopherjkeig@googlemail.com. If anyone likes to get in contact with me from any of those families, please feel free to, and we'll see what we can do.